Hello, my beautiful, gorgeous dance baby, and welcome to another episode of More Than Dance. Today is part two. We are talking about interruptions. And I mentioned before that there's two types of interruptions that I'm going to be talking about this time. And those two are transitions, which we talked about in the last episode. And today we are going to be discussing detours. And one of the things that's so funny about this again is here we are in our other podcast studio and it's an interruption. It's a huge interruption. And yes, it's like fine, right? You're experiencing this on the other end. You're like, oh, but it's fine. And it is, it's fine. And it's still something very different through the routine. And that's why I'm here to chat with you because I want to help you understand when you're on the other end that it's fine. And a great example of this is the phrase, the show must go on. And I mean, how often do you hear that as a dancer? You're just like, okay, or even a performer. You're like, oh yeah, the show must go on. Like we have to figure it out. We've got an audience to serve. We need to deliver and we got to go. So today, as we think about interruptions, and hopefully you had a chance to listen to the other episode. So if you haven't, you can go and listen to that as well. And you'll be able to understand when there has been a time of interruption for you. So maybe you were really resonating with the transitions episode and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many transitions I've had in my life. And now you understand a little bit more about that stamina gap. Well, today we're going to be discussing the detours. And detours are kind of funny because let's put ourselves on the road. And we all know how annoying that is to get into a detour because one, it's never properly labeled. It's always confusing. It's like, is this really the detour? It's always a question mark in my head. I'm always like, oh my gosh, should I just keep following this car in front of me? Do they know what they're doing? Is everyone just kind of like trying to figure it out together? And then like sometimes you do get to the thing where it's like, oh, detour, take a left. And you're like, oh gosh, thank God. Thank God they like continue labeling it. But sometimes I've been on a detour and like they show you the detour and then they just like, you know the rest. And if you're from out of town, you definitely don't know the rest. So it's always kind of stressful. And yes, it does exactly what it does. It's a detour. It takes you off your route and it takes you away from what you were expecting. Have you ever been on the road and you're going somewhere and you like really need to get someplace on time and there's a detour and you're like, okay, now I know I'm probably going to be late. And how unfortunate that is, or later than you thought. Maybe you're not going to be late. Maybe you'll still be on time. It's just, it's different. It's not how you planned. And that's exactly what a detour is. And sometimes we sign up for the detour. Sometimes we're like, oh, okay, like there's another route or there's this offering that I might want to do. Sure, sign me up. And then you don't really understand how much it's going to affect the route that you were already on. And today we're going to be talking about both of those detours. So let's brainstorm together some detours that you may have experienced in life yourself or you've seen other people experience. So in the dance world, one of the biggest detours that come to mind is an injury. And it's funny because I feel like maybe I talk about this a lot, but it's the one that I am most closely related to with my story and how I've experienced dance as an adult. And injuries are one giant detour because you think you're okay, you're working on skills, and then boom, you have your injury, you have your setback, you have your surgery, whatever it is, and now you're on a different route. However, it's the same route, except it's just like, it's a little detour. You're going to get to where you were eventually going somehow. And it's definitely not how you planned it. And so one, like, as I like to do, just to acknowledge, like, that sucks. It's so frustrating when that happens. It's so frustrating to have something get in the way of something you really want. So that's one of the biggest things that we can do is acknowledge that it sucked. We talked about that before and how it's just nice to hold space for it. And you get to hold space for it too. Sometimes we rely on other people to hold space for it for us. It's almost like we're questioning if we could feel bad about that thing. Like, do we have permission to feel bad about that thing? So we're like, hey friend, like this happened and I just want you to know. And then they're like, oh my gosh, that stinks. And you're like, that's right. You get validation from them. And you're like, yeah, that does stink. But we get to do that ourselves. We know this. We're bomb bitches. We can go ahead and give ourselves the validation like, hey, you know what? That was a shitty situation. And this is what we're going to do about it. So some other detours that definitely happen in the dance world, like One big one that I can think of right away is when you're casted as a role. It could be in the ballet, it could be in a play, it could be one special role or diversion in a routine, and then all of a sudden it's given to someone else. Well, that's a huge detour. Not only because mentally you're probably sad and grieving that role that you thought you once had, and two, because now you get to watch it from the sidelines knowing that that could have been you, and three, because now you're going to be learning a whole different part than the part that you were thinking that you were going to be. Sometimes we have happy detours, like you were thrown into an experience and you weren't maybe ready for it, but someone was like, oh, I need you to like pick up the slack, or you need to help out, or you know what? Can you teach this class for me? And then you end up getting thrown into a situation where you're a teacher before you were ready. I have air quotes on that because usually we're never ready. We carry fear with us when we go and do things. So it's kind of funny when you're thrown into something that you're perfectly capable of and going to be really good at. And it's almost like the universe's way of saying, like, you're going to be good at this. Just trust yourself. And then you go into that moment and yeah, it's a huge detour because you were like, I'm a student. Like, how am I going to be a teacher? And then there you are as a teacher. Or have you ever had the experience where you were just like doing your thing and then all of a sudden you're moving and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to find my thing in a whole different town. So it's like you're still doing your thing, yet you're in a whole different area, new friendships to be made, new routines to be had. And yes, that falls under the transition bracket, but it's also a detour because it's something that you expected and now it's different. Sometimes there's detours in scheduling. So it's like something comes up and there's scheduling issues or scheduling conflicts with taking turns with your significant other and making sure you have someone to watch the kid. Those schedule changes can be a detour, and you got to figure out, how can I still get to my class, my dance class? How can I still do the things I need to do to love and serve myself so that I'm a better parent, or so that I'm a better wife, or so that I'm a better girlfriend, and to be able to manage the current interruption. Then there's other detours. Now, we talked about burnout and how sometimes we just need to pause. Well, that's a detour because you're on the trajectory and you're doing your thing and you're going out there, you're doing your thing, and you got to figure out, like, okay, well, how am I going to pause and still do my thing? Well, you're not. You're going to pause and then you're going to do your thing. So the pause itself is the detour. Or even the adjustments in your schedule are different than the schedule that you once had where you were burning out. So incorporating those pauses into your schedule, well, those are detours. Those are things that are changing your daily life. When we think about the things that we really care about, it's usually our progress and the goals that we like to achieve, the fun that we're having, and the happiness that we're experiencing in life. And usually our happiness comes from feeling successful and feeling good about the stuff that we're doing. And when you're taken away from these goals, it can be a surprising moment where you're not understanding why you aren't at your goal. So when we look at the detours, especially if it's a detour we've selected. So for instance, have you ever done anything short term that you've included in your current schedule that you've made the decision and you're like, okay, I'm going to do this thing knowing that it's going to take me off my course, but I'm going to do it anyway because it feels right. Now, we talked about this before in the podcast episode on opportunities. When opportunities come your way and the universe just says, okay, you got to do this thing. And you get that sign from the universe and you're like, yeah, all right, I'm going to do this thing. And I recognize it's going to take me off my course of action and I'm still going to do it. And then you go, you do the thing, it does the interruption, it takes you off the detour and you're like, oh my gosh, you might feel like you wasted your time. You might feel like, oh my gosh, I am so much more off course than I would be if I didn't do that opportunity or if I didn't do that thing. So perfect example, like I chose to have knee surgery. It wasn't mandatory that I get it. It was highly encouraged. And I selected that detour. I was like, all right, this is going to like deter my life for a little bit. And then I'm going to go back on my course of action. And I'm improved because of that surgery. So that detour was a beautiful selection on my end because it helped me to feel better about the movement that I currently do. I have more range of motion than I did. And for about a year and a little bit longer, I was still dealing with the repercussions of surgery and the PT and feeling like I lost strength and I was building it back and feeling like still to this day, like my calf is so tight because they had to like take it out and like move it around. So I do get reminders of that detour that I selected. And it's also really cool because I see how that detour influenced my current day, my current routine, my current abilities to dance right now. And so sometimes like when there's something thrown at you and you're like, okay, well, I think I am going to do that. I think that sounds like a good idea for me. And this is what could have happened, right? Like I could have had the surgery and maybe like 2 months later, I could have been like, wow, like maybe I shouldn't have done that. Like I'm not even walking with my normal stride yet. And the thing about that is I didn't do that. And it's because I was really mentally prepared and I really had an understanding of what this detour was going to be like and how I was going to, for a little while, give up myself for my recovery. And so I was set in the head. It could have gone this way where I was like, man, I shouldn't have done that. And I could have beaten myself up for that selection of a detour. I could have been performing this month, or I could have been riding my bike, or I could have been doing something that I like couldn't do physically. And you know me and the word can't, but physically able, I think is different than the word can't. And I chose to not even go there with my mind because my outcome was going to be so much more profound if I waited to analyze it when I got back into my routine. So now that I have a little bit more perspective and a little bit more ability to think about my journey with this surgery, I can say that was a really great choice. You made your legs stronger. You were so patient with yourself. And all those skills that I used to recover from this surgery have actually helped me with my current course, which was my current course before the surgery. So I'm going to give you kind of like a funny example, and maybe this will help you relate. So my dad is an amazing musician. He just doesn't know it yet. And since the beginning of the year, has been working on some deep practice and some deep work within the skill set that he already has as a musician and also more. So he was approached by, I think, my mom and my mom's friends, like, oh my gosh, like you got to do this play. You got to do this. Like we need a guitarist, da, 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 da. And he was like, okay, like, I think I'm going to do that. And when he signed up for it, he was like, oh, wow. Like, flooded with information, like, oh my gosh, learning these songs and making sure to be able to know them with the amount of proficiency he wanted to know them with. And when everything was over with the play, he was like, okay, now it's time to get back to what I was working on. And what he was working on before the play started was a lot of like the drills. And the only thing I can truly compare this to in dance is probably just like, like hardcore fundamentals. Like that's what I believe he was going in hardcore on, was like hardcore fundamentals, scales, I'm sure, improvisation techniques, licks and tricks. So it's funny because now that he's getting back into it, he could think, wow, I lost time. And the better option for him and the better option for me has always been to say, well, wow, like how did that detour put us actually further than we thought we could be at this time? Even though it's not the way we predicted it to be further, it's a different further because it's a detour. So it's still on the road. We're still going towards our like goals. So how do we look at it like that? How can we figure out the best way to see it as that and not the other way, which is kind of like a more like beating yourself up kind of way. Like, oh, you made that selection. Like that was a bad choice for you because, oh, now you're behind. You can't even walk. Like, you're going to rest and then you're going to, even my body, like I lost muscle mass. Like there was so much. I mean, if you've had surgery, like how much goes into the recovery is intense. And even on the smallest surgeries. So like a lot of mental work. And so I'm thinking about it like, well, I'm further along in a lot of ways. And he's further along in a lot of ways because now he's performed 12 shows, around that number, in front of live audiences. He's been in an orchestra now. He's had practicing with others. He's gotten an opportunity to memorize music within a set list And these are all part of his bigger goals, which is playing live music. So yeah, it's different music because it was a play. And yeah, it's different structure because it's, an orchestra versus like a duo or a trio. And what we get to do is to honor it for what it is. So what feels like a detour actually is a head start, just in a very different way than we ever thought it could be. So this is a very different experience than when we have transitions, because transitions slow us down. They invite us to be patient with ourselves. Detours start as frustration. Transitions are usually like, there's anticipation. There's like, yeah, we know it's coming. It's planned. We're going to move. Let me pack. We're having a baby. Let me get ready. Detours is like, whoa, hi, surprise. Or, wow, I think I'm going to take that opportunity. And it's kind of like, we don't really know what we're up against. That's not to say that you know everything in a transition either, because there's always surprises. Let's face it, it's life. So when you think about detours, it's like, wow, you get this kind of backwards head start because you have things still going for you. It's kind of like that idea that we talked about when you're changing lanes. You're not stopping to change the lane. You're still going forward as you change lanes. So yes, it feels like it's slower. And on the other end, it's faster for reasons that we did not consider. Then, of course, there are the detours that feel like rejection, feel like failures, like that example I shared earlier of getting that role taken away from you. That's definitely an experience where you're going to be like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe that happened to me. Like, why me? Right? We don't want to get into victim mindset, though. It is nice to think about it this way. I bet you that happened for a really important reason, and I don't know why yet. Or I bet you that happened and it's getting me to my green still somehow. Or I bet you that happened and I'm still going to be okay. I think directors and choreographers are thoughtful when they're casting. And I think sometimes they're obligated in weird ways. And sometimes it just happens like you're on the obligation end of it, where someone's like getting casted as obligation and it unfortunately affected you. And that stinks. Again, getting that moment to say like, yeah, that stinks. So it can feel like this punishment from the universe. That doesn't feel good. It could also feel like you did something wrong. Raise your hand if you immediately go there. I know, because things are personal, even when they're not personal. I like to think of these detours, the ones that kind of hover around the idea of rejection, an opportunity to practice flexibility, surrendering, curiosity, even just having opportunities to reflect with yourself and to gain more awareness, even if it's possible for you to just name that feeling. Like, what do you feel? You feel left out. What do you feel? You feel undervalued. What do you feel? You feel sad because you thought you deserved that part. You worked hard for that part. So I think it might be helpful if we distinguish detours versus distractions, because we have talked about distractions before. And it's our discipline and our consistency that helps us get out of those distractions to help us move forward. And detours are actually going to be more aligned for you than a distraction is. A distraction is going to feed your fear and your avoidance more than a detour. A detour is going to align with you. It's going to progress you forward just in a different way. A distraction could feel like numbing or like running away. A detour expands your skills. It expands your capacity. A distraction is going to leave you drained or even scattered. A detour is going to require faith and curiosity. A distraction is going to feel busy but hollow. And a detour is going to feel hard and meaningful. It's funny because sometimes a detour can feel like such a big distraction. And that's what we tell ourselves. We're like, oh, I just got so distracted. I was doing this thing. And that thing you were doing is meaningful. It's purposeful. It's adding to you. It's not taking away from you. Versus when you doom scroll on the internet, yeah, you're kind of learning like little things. Maybe you're laughing here and there, but it's taking you away. Think about that in terms of like if you were, working on flexibility, like watching TV and sitting in some stretches is going to be a little bit more beneficial to you than doom scrolling and doing nothing with your body. So when we think about distractions, think about how a distraction is taking away from you. And when you think about a detour, think about it's taking it away, but it's going to bring it right back. It's going to steer slightly over here and maybe have like weird other loops. And then it's going to come over right back on the road that you're already going on. A distraction would be if you just stopped driving because you had to pull over and check out the foliage real quick. So what can we do when we are on a detour? Well, the first thing is we want to stay present, stay awake in the detour. We can sometimes be like, kind of like moody about it. Like, oh, we got ourselves in this situation. I don't even want to like go on with it. But that's going to take away from you. Versus if you're like, all right, it was kind of like the idea of sleepwalking through the detour. Like you don't want to do that because you're just like there. You're like half there. So if you're able to stay present on the detour, you're able to collect things. Remember, we're always talking about like collecting things and putting them in your basket. Like, oh, there's a cool skill that I just learned that I didn't even know I was going to learn. Or there's this cool friend that I made that, geez, I wouldn't have met her if I didn't have this detour. All those things are really cool things if you stay present and open. So another one is finding the lesson. Like I'm a big believer in there's not a lesson for everything. Like sometimes I feel like we're taught that like, well, there's probably a lesson there. And like, I think that just gets annoying sometimes. Sometimes it just is. And that's just what it is. And other times, yeah, there's a lesson. So if there's an opportunity for you in this detour to dig deeper, maybe you found out something that you didn't even know you liked. Like I realized that this isn't completely true for me, but I wonder if I had this surgery and part of my PT was swimming, I wonder if that detour would have had me really loving swimming. I mean, I know that that's a possibility. It did bring me to another detour. So that's a whole other thing, but one detour can bring you to another detour. But it could be that you created more leadership. Maybe you took more agency in your schedule now. Maybe you appreciate the hours and the time that you do dedicate towards your craft. Maybe you have more patience and more presence. There's always going to be a shift when we experience something big, because if it's big enough to be a detour, it's big enough for you to be introspective. And those moments of introspection are going to help you reflect and think and become more aware of what it is that you're experiencing. And if you experience an opportunity to be more patient, you might be able to still take that on the road that you're going, and it might be helpful for something else. It's kind of like you have skills that are good for both things, and then they come together and it makes those skills even stronger. Or you're working on one skill for something and you realize, oh, I need that flexibility. And I just got that flexibility from my detour and I'm going to bring it over to the thing that I'm actually working on. So in the case of my dad, like, you know, him being so shy to perform, he got all those opportunities to perform in front of big crowds. And now that skill of being maybe a little less shy than he was, he's going to take that over. And when he goes and does the stuff that he really wants to do, that's like more aligned with his goals, he'll be able to transfer those skills right in. So the next thing is still knowing that you're on course. So I think it's funny sometimes, like if we're on the detour, sometimes it's like, okay, I'll just go home. And yeah, that would be like the easier option sometimes. Like, I don't have to do this today. I got to go. And well, that's fight or flight if I've ever seen anything like that. And what's smart of us to do, it's this idea of not giving up because something has changed and continuing knowing that it's different. Another thing to think about too is it's like, it's not that your dream is gone forever. It's just that you're taking the scenic route, and that can be fun. Josh and I took the scenic route one time when we went to Deerfield, Western Mass, where I used to live. And the drive was like the coolest drive ever. All I remember is we went to Stop and Shop and we got like clementines and guacamole and chips. And I just remember like just having snacks and like riding this most gorgeous ride. I think we avoided the Mass Pike. I don't know really how we even got on the road like this, but it was just such a cool experience. And we still talk about it to this day. And I think it took like a little bit longer than expected to get home. But at the time, like, you know, we were just appreciating the scenic route, the detour for what it was. And it was awesome. So going back to what I was saying before, how a detour can ignite another detour. I think I mentioned this before. My surgery knee is this knee. And in the experience of healing this knee, I created a different problem on this knee. So what a detour that was. Because right as this one was really feeling better, this one really truly started to hurt. And I was like, oh my God. So think I had like one like magic month where it was like, things are nice. And I was like really feeling the healing of this. And then it was right before this kind of like ignited. And then I got another detour. And from that, I learned so much because like I learned about shockwave therapy. I'd never known about that before. And now like I can tell people, because you could imagine me knowing a lot of movers, like there's going to be injuries everywhere. So I can now say, hey, you can ask your doctor about shockwave therapy. I personally went through it and it was torturous and awesome. And I was able to really heal this part of my knee. I also got an opportunity to try blood flow restriction exercises. And it was like out of this world, like kind of crazy thing. Like you put this like kind of like a blood pressure cuff around your whole leg and it like stops the blood in that area. And then you do the movements and it really allowed me to feel my quad. And it was like really cool. And like, yeah, it was so painful, like another painful injury. Yes, huge detour. Like again, being distracted from doing what I really want to do, which is to just do more tricks and to gain more strength and to be able to do like all the things I want to do in dance, all the things that I also used to be able to do. So it's like I'm constantly trying to gain back my skill set and then some. And then I get these interruptions, these detours, transitions to take me off my course. And the bottom line is, this is my course. I'm supposed to know this information. I'm supposed to know about blood flow restriction so that if any one of my students needs to know about it, I can be like, hey, did you ask your PT about blood flow restriction? Maybe try that. Or, hey, did you ask your doctor about shockwave therapy? I did that and it worked for me. Or, hey, this is how I'm modifying my move. I see you have a knee problem. Like, this is how I do it. And now I get to be this beautiful example to my students when they come through. So embrace the detour, embrace the transition, embrace the interruptions, because they are one, part of life, and they are two, leading you to appreciate what you have in different ways. And especially with the detour, it's leading you still to your goals, just in a very different way. And if you're on a detour right now, you're not off course. You're actually supposed to be where you are. So embrace it and love it and keep dancing. If this was helpful for you, it would mean the world to me if you gave it a 5-star written review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I'll see you on the dance floor.